Nothing could have put Fannie Lou Hamer on the path to political activism more than her struggling childhood. Fannie Lou Townsend was born in Mississippi on October 6 of 1917. Her parents were Jim and Lou Ella Townsend, who lived in Montgomery County, Mississippi, with their 20 children, Fannie Lou being the last child of them all. African Americans didn't have access to medical care, and as a baby, Fannie Lou broke her leg because one of her brothers dropped her. Her leg was never healed properly, causing her to have a limp which lasted her whole life. When Fannie was 2 years old, they had to move to a plantation at Louisville in Sunflower County. Just at the age of 6, Fannie Lou began picking cotton. Fannie was a good student and she loved going to school. Fannie loved to read, sing, and memorize poetry. But unfortunately, when she was 12, she had to leave school to help her family. In 1942, Fannie Lou Townsend, at the age of 25, married Perry Hamer, who was a 30-year-old sharecropper. Dorothy and Virgie were the two girls the Hamers adopted. A few years after, teenage boy from Chicago, Emmett Till, was beaten and killed in Mississippi in 1955, Hamer decided to join the civil rights movement. Hamer had a small uterine tumor, and a few years later she entered a hospital to get it removed. The white doctors performed a hysterectomy without her consent. In the South, these operations were done frequently to black women. This event also prompted Hamer to join the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, also known as the NCC, and the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, SCLC, in 1962. On August 31st of 1962, Hamer joined 17 others on a bus to Indianola to register to vote. Hamer was the first one in the courthouse, as they only allowed 2 African Americans at a time. When registering, they gave literacy tests, which included difficult passages from the state constitution that they had to read and interpret. Since county workers decided who passed, blacks always failed and whites always passed. On the drive back to Louisville, the bus was stopped and the driver was arrested because the police claimed the bus was too yellow. While the passengers waited, scared and nervous, Fannie Lou began to sing, and they all joined. Singing "This Little Light of Mine" and "Go Tell It on the Mountain" was one of her features of her activism. In Nashville at a conference, Hamer inspired and proved to be a motivational speaker. Fannie was a citizenship teacher, and one day on her way home from Georgia, she was arrested with other workers when they stopped at a whites-only bus cafe. She was beaten at the jail, and in spite of her injuries, Hamer led the other workers who were also beaten in jail to singing. Fannie Lou was working as a field secretary for the SNCC in 1963. The work of the MFDP was one part of the 1964 Freedom Summer, where white and black students went to Mississippi to help register African American voters. That year, Hamer co-founded the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party. She was spokesperson of the delegation to challenge the seating of white Mississippians at the Democratic Convention. During her testimony, Johnson called a last-minute press conference, causing networks to break. But that didn't work, because other news programs did broadcast her testimony. As a gesture, Democratic officials offered 2 seats, but the MFDP rejected the offer. In 1965, she was an MFDP candidate. Hamer joined Martin Luther King Jr., Andrew Young, and Floyd McKissick of the Congress of Racial Equality to march on behalf of Meredith, the first black student at the University of Mississippi, who was shot during his March Against Fear. In 1968, Hamer and other MFDP delegates were seated at the Democratic Convention in Chicago. In 1969, she established the Freedom Farm Cooperative to help poor families in Sunflower County. Fannie Lou Hamer died in 1973 at the age of 59.